Hey y'all, welcome to Dark Sugar Podcast. This is your host, Kiana. Always the right time, always the right moment to tune in, always the right time for me to bulldoze through the imposter syndrome and make an episode, right? It's Sunday night here in Phoenix. It's like 8 p.m., getting ready for bed, trying to meal prep, trying to get ready for tomorrow. And creatively, I just was sitting and admitting to myself that I have been feeling somewhat creatively unfulfilled, right? It's been a year since I've experienced a severe mental health, I don't even know what to call it. I'm trying not to be dramatic. Okay. I've already spoken about this, but a year ago, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It was super unnerving and stressful. It was a very scary time for me because I didn't really know what was going on or what would happen. I literally felt like I was in a fork in the road, and it was kind of like, okay, your life can go down this one path, or if you get better and things work out, and go this way. And it's been a year. So literally last October, around this time, the beginning of November, is when I got out of I left the behavioral hospital that I was at, and it was my second time being there within 1 month. And I'm kind of comparing, like literally I can picture now my mom picking me up from the behavioral hospital, psychiatric hospital, not a psych ward, but a psychiatric hospital. And I just remember feeling like, how am I supposed to get back up? Like, I wasn't in school. I didn't have a job. I'm lying. I did have a job, but I wasn't formally teaching. I was still kind of like assistant, substitute vibe. And now things are so much better. I feel always room to grow, but I feel definitely more stable than I was last year. And I'm kind of like, what is missing? And I've already talked to you guys how I feel about podcasting. I don't feel like a real podcaster. I feel really strange about it sometimes. And I've vocalized it without trying to seem dramatic. But for all the creatives out there who are in your field, in your profession, and you just kind of feel like, is this for me? Am I really doing this? Am I really good at this? Is this what I should be doing? Type of thing. But I've been having the urge, like the biggest push to record, and I'm like, okay. And I just ignored all the little thoughts in my head about, well, you haven't recorded in a long time, and what about this, what about that? I'm over it. I'm just recording. But I was just reflecting on where I've been and how far I've come a year ago. And I'm not gonna lie, when people ask, how am I doing? If it's a spiritual friend that I have, I'll confide in them and tell them, yo, I feel like I'm going through my second biggest ego death. But really, when I was thinking about this, I would technically, no, I thought what I went through last year was an ego death, but I feel like it was more of a spiritual awakening, which I will try to elaborate on the difference at a different time. But I feel like there are different things. I feel like ego has to do more so with personality and outward persona perception, and spiritual awakening is more like your whole body and soul elevating to this new spiritual level that you necessarily weren't at before. I think that can be embedded in an ego death, and vice versa. And within a spiritual awakening, you can have an ego death, but I do feel like they're separate. And so last year I did think, oh my God, this is the biggest ego death, but it was more like a huge spiritual awakening. And I've seen some videos that do say that, like, having a psychotic break or something like that is actually your body just awakening spiritually to another level. And I like that more than just me talking about, having a psychotic break or going crazy or whatever. And then that's another thing. I was reading, I love how I can't source anything. I was reading, and it was saying, it was actually some post on Instagram about like how feelings what was it about? How certain how certain trauma wounds manifest in your body and in your life. So it was like having the trauma of growing up not being good enough, constantly being told that you're not perfect or why are you always making mistakes. It can cause sexual repression, which I thought was so incredible because I always thought any type of sexual repression or outward hypersexual, impression was a sign of sexual trauma. But that kind of like stirred in me. I'm like, wait, I don't have to have sexual trauma in order to, have a trauma related to my sexuality. And I was like, okay, weird. And then it was saying that being highly empathetic or being able to feel other people's feelings can result in like severe anxiety, which I was like, oh, because I often find myself being like, oh, I have anxiety. Why do I have anxiety? Thinking anxiety is like a part of my personality. I have anxiety. I must be anxious. But I definitely identify as an empath. And I'm like, oh, literally anxiety is just your body manifesting this ability to absorb other people's emotions. And that's, I think, a real big difference that people sometimes skip when they talk about being an empath or being highly sensitive. And when I noticed the difference, that's when I started to shape. Everything was starting to just being shaped differently. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not just feeling other people's emotions, I'm absorbing them as well. So that was another, symptom, anxiety. But then it also listed bipolar as a symptom of this people-pleasing dichotomy of being able to feel so much and wanting to bend over backwards and also wanting my own autonomy and independence. And I was like, is that why I'm bipolar? Because I'm just caught in the middle of these like extremes, and it's just literally a manifestation of these extremes. And that's causing a chemical imbalance in my brain. There's actually nothing inherently wrong with me. Like when I thought about it as symptoms, like, oh, bipolar is a symptom of, anxiety is a symptom of, I was just like, oh, wow. And so I'm really just thinking back to that moment I was first diagnosed, and like where I am now. And I'm just like, wow. And I do feel like that last year was a spiritual awakening. This is more so my second ego death. My first biggest ego death, just to recap, was 2021. And the catalyst definitely was the Enneagram, me discovering the Enneagram, but it was already in my soul. I was friends with so many people I'm not even friends with now. I was in a relationship that I'm not in now. And I started therapy and I started doing heavy EMDR, which probably was another really big catalyst. EMDR, eye movement, reprocessing, something. I don't know what it stands for. I don't know. But it's basically, it was founded by this psychologist/psychiatrist, and she discovered that when she took walks with her patients, they were able to process their feelings more on the walk versus them just sitting down. So then scientists started to do more discoveries and blah, blah, blah. And it came out that when you're doing something and talking about a highly traumatic emotional event, you're able to process it more than if you're just sitting down looking at the person. So with EMDR, it started with these like buzzing things in your hands. I don't know how to call it, but it looks like two small cylinders or cans that you're holding in your hand connected by a wire, and they're buzzing like zzz, 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 while you're talking about your trauma. And because your brain is focusing on two things, I was able to have epiphanies during me talking about my trauma. I was able to slow the whole situation, like my body completely slowed down, and I was able to express the emotion I was feeling and also like just let it sit in my body and kind of leave. But EMDR, it can definitely be an overload. I personally was starting to do EMDR too much. So, I had to put that down for a second because it was like EMDR. And I'm like, wait, this is just too much of a good thing, right? I don't know how to explain it. It was just too much. It was an overload. But when I first started doing it, all this stuff is coming up. I'm thinking it was really good. And then, like I said, I was in these really unfulfilling, draining relationships where I took on this role, as a people pleaser, because that's how I was, raised, and that's how I survived. And yet I was attracting all these these relationships that were not in my vibration, like not vibing. So a friend, who I'm not friends with now, but a friend, I was shown the Enneagram, and I was like, oh, wow. Like literally my mind was blown, and I had a bit of a breakdown about what I was discovering. And it just showed me how the subconscious narrative in my head of wanting to be wanted and not feeling good enough and feeling that my fulfillment lies within someone else was driving me to these really unhealthy relationship dynamics. And I realized that me just trying to be a good person and trying to be kind all the time, that was really fake. But I accused of everyone else being fake. And it's like, well, if you have a bunch of fake people around you, you might want to consider where you're not being yourself. Not saying you're as bad as them or you're as fake as them, but clearly if you're that close to super fake people for a long extended period of time, there must be something about you that you're hiding, repressing, not showing. Because if you were showing it, probably wouldn't be friends with those people. So you know what I'm saying? So like, that's how I was feeling. I was kind of like, wow. And so discovering the Enneagram led to me having a dark night of the soul, which is when I was just severely depressed. I was isolated. I was processing I was crying so much. I was so sad, so fucked up, so not happy. And I was just like grieving what I just realized about myself. Like, wow, I haven't been myself. I've attracted these relationships that are not fulfilling or damaging in some way to my health, my mental health. And I spent a long time pointing the finger at these people instead of really seeing, wow, this is where I need to change. And it just opened me up so much to how personality focused I was. How am I appearing? Your personality, persona, mask. It's not bad to have one. We all have to have a personality or a persona for the outside world, at work, church, it's with your friends, with different types of friends. Oh, this friend brings out this side of me. That friend brings out that side of me. That's not bad and doesn't mean you're fake. But when the focus is just being nice, I have to always appear nice. I have to always appear like a good person. When I realize, how nice am I if I'm saying yes to somebody, to something I really don't want to do, and then throw it in their face after because I feel slighted? Or how nice am I if I do something for somebody, really don't want to do it, and I feel shitty the whole time and my attitude's off the whole time? And I was starting to see that being nice wasn't really getting me damn near anywhere. And so, that took a minute to process for me, and it was huge. It was really, really crazy. And this ego, and so I'm thinking I'm kind of done shedding. Oh, I got it. My persona, blah, blah, blah. So then this second ego death, I feel like, was a lot of me realizing more subconscious narratives, but more so like reframing them, realizing, wait, I'm not a bad person, realizing, wait, I'm actually beautiful and talented, and I have, what is the word I'm blanking? Potential for a lot of success and growth. I started to work. It's like the first ego death completely broke me down. My whole building of my personality fell to the ground. And then the second ego death feels like me starting to build it back up and seeing, wait, which parts do I actually want? Like, we are building back my house, but it's going to look different. It's not the same house. And so I'm realizing, speaking up more. I'm a naturally direct, assertive person. I didn't know that. All those years of me people pleasing and saying yes when I really want to say no, and staying quiet and wanting to be the cool chick that's laid back and doesn't get really involved or ever really too intimate so I don't get hurt. All of that, I'm realizing what is not me, and that I'm naturally direct. I naturally say how I feel. I just had a cap on it because of all the trauma and relationships I was in. So I was realizing there's a lot that I actually don't have to unlearn, but there are a lot of traits that I need to let go of. I'm thinking I have to build up from complete scratch, when it's like, no, this piece of your house is there. You just need to put it up. It's right there. You don't need to completely rebuild, get a new house. Oh my God, I have to buy new tools, new everything. Like, literally, even about my self-worth, I was kind of like, oh, I have to go get some self-worth. Where do I go get what store do I need to buy my self-worth? And then I'm like, no, you actually have it. You just need to stop being scared of it. Get that shit out the closet, hang it up, put it on your dresser. Let's make this a thing. Let's go. I was seeing where fear was really the driving factor of a lot of this. They say it's not love versus hate. It's love versus fear. It's not that it's not that I don't like myself. I'm scared to actually like myself. What is loving myself? What will that look like? And what will I have to let go of? Because y'all, I was also very connected to this dark, melancholy, people pleaser, victim mode persona. I didn't want to let her go. And I'm still letting her go. And I feel like I'm grieving each time this persona in me comes up. And I'm like, I'm sorry, baby girl. I gotta let you go. I love you. But you're not helping anymore. You don't need to be in the driver's seat anymore. And it's definitely been a lot of grief. I've been crying. I've been moody. I've been having like many identity crises and existential crises, it seems. And I'm just really seeing that me, who I am, as I am, I'm okay. Even if I do have an insecure day where I feel like shit and I'm looking at everybody thinking that they're better than me, I'm not going to beat myself up for that anymore. Or let's say, or let's say, I'm trying to, not feel anxious, not have social anxiety. Okay, let's say I do go to a party and I do get social anxiety. Who the fuck cares? No one even knows but me. And that's another thing. I'm not walking around here thinking that people can read my mind and shit, or that they can hear my thoughts when they can't. That's called like logical fallacy, the spotlight effect, when you think everyone can see you and everyone's paying attention to you, and everyone, that little flaw that you see, oh my God, it's magnified. Everybody can see it. Everybody's looking at it. And yeah, y'all, it's just it's a lot of letting go. I've gotten a chance to even speak to a lot of people that I had to let go of during my first ego death. I went through this crazy thing where I felt really guilty for how Haley, the one person I'm trying to reference right here, her, she's the anxious attachment lady on Instagram. I don't know if you follow her. I really like her page, and her posts really, really helped me when I was first going through my first ego death and letting go of this people pleaser trope that I had, put on for myself. And she was explaining how when you first start speaking up, you're going to explode. If your whole life you've never spoken up, and in these relationships you've never spoken up and said how you felt, you'll probably explode like a volcano. And that's exactly what I did. I just popped the fuck off. And several people said, yeah, you popped off, but then didn't want to talk about it after. Like 3 of them said that, which I thought was really funny. Not funny, like condescending, but I thought that was funny for myself that I did that. I would be like, you did this and this and this, and what about this time? And you know what? I'm just done feeling this way. Boom. Don't want to talk to you. I'm done. And then I came back around a couple months later. Okay, so I'm really sorry how that came out. And yeah, a couple of them were like, yeah, you didn't even want to talk about it after, which I also had to realize, yes, they are right. I did not want to talk after, and they are right. That's definitely not a traditional way to handle things, but at the same time, yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have the emotional capacity to talk to you after that. Why would I? How could I? But now I'm realizing, well, one, you don't wait years or months to bring up something, but also I had to give myself grace, y'all, because in the moment, I'm repressing all that I'm feeling, thinking it's bad to feel a type of way that someone said something. And a lot of the times it was rude shit. It wasn't shit that was like, oh, you're just being sensitive. No, it was rude shit. But I just grew up really having my voice silenced. So and then I also judge my emotions. That's something that I'm working on even now. Not judging my emotions, turning that inner critic off. Just turning it off, giving her a hug, telling her, ma'am, not needed right now. No, thank you. Because someone would say something, then I would think, oh, that's bad that I feel that. And it would happen within milliseconds. And then maybe a month later, the feeling would come back up, the memory would come back up, and I'd feel so angry in a pit in my stomach. I just felt so fucked up, and I was just like, that actually really bothered you. But then I'm having anxiety even more now because I waited so long. So now I really can't say anything. And instead of saying, hey, I know this is really random, but do you have space and time to talk about this thing that really bothered me? But I'm just letting you know it definitely happened a long time ago, and I should have said something then, but I couldn't, and I want to say something now. I didn't have that vocabulary to do that. So it was just, they would be like, hey, how you doing? And then I would just go boom, and it would just like a literal bomb going off. But like I said, I don't beat myself up about it because there are certain factors that were into play for me not saying anything to them. So I don't really beat myself up about it, but I know now that I have to speak up. And it's actually not hard for me to speak up. I have a lot of anxiety about hurting other people's feelings because I'm an empath. And so, yeah, so let me see. Okay, the persona, letting that go, fear, tackling the fear with love. I do self-love affirmations all the time. And I don't even call it affirmations before. I just talk to myself and give myself love. And my mom got a rose quartz crystal several years ago, and she started listening to self-love meditations and affirmations. She would just be like, Kiana, you need to self-love. Like when I'd come to her like, Mom, this person did that and that person did that and this and fuck this and oh my God, why is this like this? I'm having an anxiety attack. And she would just be like, you need self-love. And I'm just looking at her like, what are you talking about? Like self-love, what does that have to do with this? And even growing up, I had this friend and she would always go like, you need to love yourself. If I told her I was going through something or some man was treating me some way, she'd be like, you need to love yourself. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no idea what she meant. And now I definitely do. And, there's a lot of self-help on social media, and I'm not going to lie to you. My therapist suggested this to me, and I am so grateful she did. But I have unfollowed several self-help mental health accounts, I was just getting an overload of conflicting information, and I was starting to idolize these people like, wow, they have it figured out. I don't. No, they're me talking to you on a podcast about ego deaths and self-love and shit when I literally had a mini breakdown like 3 hours ago before this. So they're not perfect. They're not any better. Maybe they can just formulate their words and, make graphics, and I'm not trying to put them down. But at the same time, my perfectionism was coming out again through all these pages that I was following with these conflicting. Now I follow maybe about 5 or 6, and I'm definitely going to go through another round. Actually, maybe more than that, but I just only see a couple now. It's not like I'm scrolling for 30 minutes to find a regular post. That's what was happening. I was like, where are my normal posts on my feed? Like, it's just all mental health. And some of it was very black and white. Like, you should be able to meet your own needs. No one can meet your needs. And I agree with her saying, like, basic needs, self-regulation, feeding yourself, blah, 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 paying your bills, da da da. I don't know, like loving yourself. Okay. But at the same time, I feel like all these posts, because we're getting it right? Beginning of, what is it? No one was talking about mental health. This is new. So of course we're going to go from one extreme. We're trying to find the balance, right? So now all this information is coming like, wait, actually, yes, you definitely have to meet your own needs as an adult, but we heal through relationships. We heal through connections. We live in America. We live in a very individualized society, which is unfortunate because people find that you live longer connected to other people. You're happier in groups. You're happier with some sort of connection to somebody else. And it's not that you need somebody else. That's how we're wired. Like, it's how our brains work. And so that was a tangent. Where was I going? Oh, okay. That's just to explain that, mental health information is definitely elevating, and I feel like it's getting more of a balance versus just these crazy black and white posts. So I had to unfollow a lot of them and also just get my own balance for what I think and how I want my life to be. Because the wounded part of me is very swayed by what someone thinks. And it's like, I don't give a fuck what people want or what they think, but the wounded part of me cares. So it's like, I give a fuck, but I don't. And, that's been a huge thing for me. And also I've been, realizing how to use my empathy. I compare being empathic with having a superpower. It'll feel like a curse sometimes, especially when you're first learning how to use it. I think of those superhero kids on TV shows or movies where when they're first learning how to use their powers, they're setting shit on fire, destroying things, and they don't know how to do it. They don't know what they're doing. And when I say superpower, I don't mean I'm a superhuman, like I'm better than everybody else, or I'm a superhero, but it's definitely an elevated gift amongst elevated gifts that not a lot of people have, right? And so I'm realizing when it needs to be on, when it needs to be off. It doesn't need to be on all the time. I thought not necessarily I thought it did, but I just didn't know I could turn it off. And I felt guilty when I needed to turn it off, right? So, just maybe, I don't know, sorry, I'm trying to think of a good example without telling too much. But, I guess when you so let's say you first meet somebody, you guys click, and then I'm talking about a friend, a partner, whoever. First meet a friend, you guys are cool, you click on some basic shit, hear a little bit of their life story. Okay, empathy kicks in, you start to really understand them, why they work, who they are, you feel their emotions, blah, blah, blah. Then they start acting shady towards you, and you see the real them. Naturally, you're going to back up and be like, wait, distance. Okay, hold on. But for an empath, that backing up and that distance and whatever, it's really hard for me. But then I do a perception check. Okay, why is this person acting weird towards me? Why are they being shady? Why are they putting me down? Why are they telling weird, backhand compliments or jokes? Like, what's going on? And not feeling bad for having to pull back or thinking of this person, wow, they're not nice. Even me just saying that person's not nice, I feel guilty for saying that, even though that person's not nice. And I'm just seeing how, yes, your words are powerful. I feel like it's a little bit my OCD wanting to pay attention to the words I use, because I think it puts out energy or something, and I don't want to be a bad person. I don't know what it is, but I had to realize that your empathy doesn't have to be on for people that do not have the capacity to reciprocate it. It does not have to be on. I'm not saying that people around you need to be perfect. Not what I'm saying. But if you meet somebody and their energy's whack, they're on this dissonant vibration that you're on, not, you guys aren't matching. They're rude, they're projecting, their insecurities are completely on their sleeve and they're throwing them at you, you can turn it off. And I'm realizing that I can turn I'm like, this superpower, I'm not going to use it right here. I'm not going to use it right now. And when you think of superheroes, they're wearing regular clothes, walking around in disguises. No one knows that they have that. I don't have to always have my cape on, trying to be Captain Save a Bitch. I don't need to do that. And so I'm realizing that now in this ego death, what being empathic means, turning it on, turning it off. Also, tuning more so into my body and how I feel around people. I get very overstimulated and overwhelmed easily. And I would hate it. There was a time I was really in tune, but like I said, these relationships I was in, in order to make them work, I had to abandon myself. So I abandoned myself, which also means there was a lot of disassociation going on because I had to abandon my body. So now I'm back in my body. I'm examining which situations make me dissociate in that way. And I'm slowing down. I'm breathing. I'm taking breaths. I'm like, okay, wait, how is my body feeling? What's happening? What's the first emotion that I just thought of? Where is it coming from? Who is it coming from? Is it me? I'm able to really slow down and tune back into myself in that way. Yeah. And it's been good. It's been good. This definitely doesn't feel as heavy as my first ego death. That one was like glass shattering. I would love to know you guys' spiritual awakening or ego death stories if you have any. Because I have been connecting with a lot of people who are like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I went through this several times, and I didn't know that you can have an ego death multiple times. But your ego never dies. You actually need a stable ego. And that's the key, having it stable, not having it super inflated to the point where you think you're better and you're putting people down, or super deflated where you're putting yourself down and participating in major self-sabotage. So your ego never dies. It just recalibrates and dissolves and rebuilds, but it doesn't ever die. I would actually consider the phrase ego collapse. I kind of like that better. My ego collapsed completely. It almost like disintegrated and then whatever the opposite of regenerated, disintegrate, reintegrate, disintegrated and reintegrated. Is that the right? I don't think those are the right opposites, but you know what I'm trying to say. Think of like, I don't know, just like woo, like separated and then went and then like came back together. And I hope my sound effects, I hope you could like picture with the sound what I was y'all know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I would call it more of a collapse than anything. And I'm just really grateful for the space and opportunity to do all this spiritual, mental, socio-emotional work on myself. And I can tell that if I hadn't done this, I'd be in a really weird place. I feel like I'd be in some guy's basement somewhere. I'm not even trying to be funny. I would just be in a really really tough spot, and I would have lost myself by now, for sure, like completely. It's almost like I can resonate with it on a different timeline, and I'm like, yeah, I just wouldn't even, or I'd just be a different person. I don't know, but yeah, I'm very grateful. It definitely feels like I'm coming back to myself. I feel the parts of my development from a child that were arrested due to trauma, they're being nourished and nurtured by me through the people around me also supporting me. But it's like I'm nurturing my inner child. I'm nurturing that 8-year-old Kiana, and I can feel parts of me developing that were always there, but I just really had no idea. Because when people would be like, what were you like as a child? I'd feel this blankness. And I honestly could not really, I can picture myself as a child. And when I try to feel how I felt as a child, I honestly don't feel anything. It feels kind of blank. It feels like I was starting to develop and then it just quickly stopped. And so I was like a little shell of an 8-year-old. Like, I really can't feel a personality there. As a young child, I really don't feel her. I don't know. I'll say, oh, I say I played by myself a lot, even though I was by myself a lot. You know, my older sister, I didn't grow up with her, and my parents were emotionally absent. My dad physically absent. So I just say, oh, you know, I played by myself a lot. I was quiet, which I was, and smart. Yeah, you know, I was a gifted kid. But other than that, I almost feel like I could be talking about any child. I didn't feel a connection. But now I'm like, oh, these parts of you are starting to develop. The parts of you that had to stop due to, you know, abandoning myself as a young child. And so that's really incredible, that feeling. And I've had a lot of support, you know, having both of my parents alive and in their own healed spaces where they have been able to talk to me about my childhood. That has been extremely helpful. Even my dad, who has dementia, has been able to articulate what he was going through at the time and the reasons why he was so absent in my life and what he was going through internally and what he was trying to process from his childhood. Right. And so, you know, same with my mom. She's apologized, told me what she was going through. I've learned more about her childhood, and it's helped me have a lot of compassion for her, along with severely changed behavior. You know, my parents definitely are in their elevated phases later in life, which I think is beautiful. And you know, I'm starting to align with different friends and different people around me. And I've noticed even my friends around me have elevated, you know, on their own. And we've been able to grow together in that way. And it's really cool. And I definitely am looking forward to more personality developments in myself and my core, you know, your essence of who you are. That will never change. Your personality can definitely change, but I feel like that balance of having your essence, personality, and ego kind of all intact and being stable are huge things. And I just really, again, appreciate y'all's support, y'all's following, y'all's listening. Please share. Let's talk. DM me. Let me know what you're going through. And I was trying to like say the day today and tie it in with the week, like it's November, blah blah blah, and I hope you have a great week. But I don't know what day it is. Is it the 7th? It's the week of November. What day is it? What is the day? I'm just gonna say it's the 6th. It's the week of November 6th. And I hope y'all have a blessed week.